Hello, welcome back to Learn Oikonomia. In this video, we are going to look into a macroeconomic concept, that is consumption theory. Before understanding the very depth of the consumption theory topic, let's understand the very background of the topic. So what I have planned is that I have divided this divided this topic into two sessions. In the first area in the first video, we'll be discussing the background of consumption theory, and that is what we are going to do in this video. And in the coming video, we'll be discussing the various consumption theories. Okay. So with that, we are going to see the rational optimization framework. Many economists have studied consumption. As you all know, there have been various theories of consumption. Different economists have tried to look into the consumption, the factors influencing consumption, etc. So each of them have different ideas or different opinion. For example, when Keynes told that consumption is a function of income, and also he told about the subjective factors, objective factors, etc. Milton Friedman, the father of monetarism, he had certain different ideas about consumption. The factors which were taken by different economists were mostly different. Apart from in the case of income, there have been differences with respect to the factors taken by different economists as the factors influencing consumption. So we'll be discussing each of these in detail in the coming video. So before that, let's understand the basic framework of consumption theories. Okay, so the rational optimization, this is actually an assumption. Okay, and this assumption is considered to be untestable. Even though this is untestable, without additional assumptions about why and how consumers care about the level of consumption, consumers make certain preferences, and these preferences are assumed to be captured by a utility function, right? Why we are making consumption? Because we know that if we consume certain commodities, that will give us utility, and this utility is actually a micro concept. And even though this utility is a micro concept, consumption is something to do with macro. We have to understand that each of these, both of these have very related relationship, right? So let's understand this through an example. uh, Economists, whether we are dealing with the theories in international economics or macroeconomics or microeconomics, macro, micro, whatever it may be, we have each of the theory which we discuss have got certain assumptions, and this is considered to be a prerequisite for economic theories. Economists, they build their theory after making certain assumptions, and they say that the theory is built after framing these assumptions, and this theory will be happening only if the assumptions are met. So here the first assumption is that the urgency of consumption needs will decline as the level of consumption increases, and this is known as the declining marginal utility of consumption. And also it is assumed that people prefer to face less rather than more risk in their consumption. That means that they are risk averse. And the next assumption is that unavoidable uncertainty in future, with this income generates some degree of precautionary saving. We have to understand that the standard versions of certain models which discusses consumption make less assumptions. And if you look into certain assertions that the pleasure yielded by today's consumption does not depend upon the past consumption, etc. And also current pleasure does not depend upon the comparison of one's consumption to the consumption of others, etc. So these are certain assumptions. We know that in the standard theories of consumption, uh, economists use minimum assumptions. So this is considered to be a good aspect. If your theory, if you are going to build a theory, and if when you are going to build a theory, if it has got more number of assumptions, that means that you have to satisfy all these assumptions, then only your theory will be working. Otherwise, your theory will not work. So that means that if you have got less number of assumptions, your theory is considered to be a good one. Okay, compared to the theory which has got more number of assumptions. Within the rational optimization framework, there are two approaches. You might have heard about the life cycle model. We'll be discussing this model in the coming video in detail, and this is put forward by Franco Moltigliani and Brumberg, and they say about the consumption pattern of the people over their lifetime. Okay, and they say that the household spending decisions are actually driven by household members' assessments of expenditure needs and income over the remainder of their lives, taking into account the predictable events such as the drop in their income, which could be predicted at retirement. And this is predicted, right? This could be predicted. We know that your salary, it is something which is very much high than your pension, and you can predict this aspect, and as per this aspect you will make your lifetime consumption decisions. Okay, so the standard version of life cycle model, we can see that it also assumes that consumers would prefer to spend everything before they die, and this is actually something that is not happening. We know that people save a lot, and people cannot spend all their savings before they die, because our death is unpredictable. We do not know whenever our death comes. So, so even though people are making a lot of savings, many people die even before using their savings. Many people many people die after making a lot of debt. Right. So we cannot predict our death, and we cannot in that fashion we cannot say that we will be finishing all our savings off before we die. Life cycles models are most commonly employed in microeconomics modeling, like household level data on consumption, income, wealth. Are If we are using all these kinds of data, we are actually dealing with microeconomics. Macroeconomics, they tend to use a simplified version of optimization framework, which is known as the permanent income hypothesis. And this too again is another important theory in the arena of macroeconomics. We will be discussing this theory, which is put forward by Milton Friedman in his treatise on of consumption function. Okay. Then in this permanent income hypothesis, there is a problem because this theory omits the detailed treatment of demographics and retirement in comparison to the life cycle model. And these, when it plays a very important role in the life cycle model, it has not treated. These things were not treated in the permanent income hypothesis, and as a result, this is what we have already discussed in the beginning of this video. Different economists differ in the way in which they treat different factors which influence consumption. So that's all about the differences. We can see that John Maynard Keynes, he had his own theory of consumption, and this is stated in his general theory of employment, interest and money. And he believes that 90% of any increase in the current income would translate into an immediate increase in consumption expenditure. Okay, only 90% is used for consumption and 10% is used for what is known as savings. So 10% is gone as savings. Evidence has shown that Friedman permanent income hypothesis, it is something that is a very comparatively, that is a better theory comparatively, when we compare different theories of consumption with the permanent income hypothesis put forward by Milton Friedman. Okay, he has argued that for one-to-one relation, a one-to-one correlation between increased income and increased spending, this would occur only when the income increases was perceived to reflect a permanent change in circumstances. Okay, coming to the modification to the standard framework, we could see that there have been many versions of different theories of consumption coming up today also. Different economists are thinking about these theories, each of these theories, and they are coming with a lot of criticisms, and they are coming with solutions to the criticism as well. So the modern mathematical versions of life cycle as well as permanent income hypothesis models used by different economists, these are considered to be some kind of refinements to the original ideas. For example, if you take the modern models, this would imply that the marginal propensity to consume, or the MPC, this out of your windfall gains or windfalls, this is something which is considered to be much higher for the poor than for the rich households, right? So this tendency, if you're taking into consideration this tendency, it makes it very much impossible to determine the impact of a tax cut or a government program on consumption spending without knowing whether it is aimed primarily at low income people or high income people. The theory further indicates that tax cut or spending programs aim primarily at the low-income household, and this should be considerably more effective at stimulating or maintaining the aggregate spending than programs aimed at richer households. Whenever you are taking into consideration the consumption theories, you have to see whether it is influencing the rich or the poor equally or in a similar fashion. We know that the rich have more motive to spend. The poor could not spend a lot because they have only less money. So in this case, we have to look into their proportion, the proportion of spending, how much proportion of their income is spent by the rich persons, and how much proportion of their income is spent by the poor person, and are they equal or are they different? So this is what we have to look into when we discuss consumption theories. If you look into the case of Adam Smith, the very father of modern economics, he clearly did not believe in any of these assumptions. He actually said that the pleasure yielded by a given level of consumption is independent of the consumption standard of the surrounding community. But this is not true when we take into consideration the explanation given by Dusenberry. Dusenberry says that people have a tendency to imitate others, especially with respect to consumption. Even if we are rich or even if we are poor, we have a tendency to imitate others. For example, if our neighbor buys a new car or a new dress, we have a tendency to buy that. Even if we go for taking loans, or if we go for borrowing, etc., we would like to buy that particular thing because we want to show to our neighbor that even we have that capacity to buy that particular thing. Okay. However, we can see that researchers into the consequences of the types of comparison utility, and this suggests that observable individual spending behavior, this is very much same whether one cares about the absolute or relative levels of consumption, because there is nothing that the typical individual can do to change the consumption level of others. um, why we are consuming? Because we are getting some utility, right? And this is something which could be considered as equivalent to some pleasure out of your consumption. And then the rational consumers will realize that they will be happier if they increase their level of consumption. But we have to understand that there is something called diminishing marginal rate of consumption. I mean, your MPC, diminishing marginal propensity to consume, and all. I mean, diminishing marginal rate of consumption. So that means that even if you consume more and more with your increase in consumption, sorry, diminishing marginal utility, that's the exact term. Diminishing marginal utility means that as you increase your consumption levels, the utility you derive from your consumption would come down. You have to understand very specifically that here, as you increase the consumption, the level of consumption of a particular commodity, this particular commodity is very important. So the very same commodity, if you increase the consumption of that particular commodity, what happens is that when you increase your consumption, the utility level would come down for each successive unit of consumption. Then coming to have some kind of habitual formation or habit formation, this also implies a very different reaction to income shocks that reflects a gradual adaptation to new circumstances. If you are addicted to some particular commodity, that means that even if your income falls, you have a tendency to buy that commodity because you cannot live without that commodity. So you will either you go for borrowing or something, or you to purchase that particular commodity if that particular commodity is a bit costly. Okay, the speed of adjustment depends on the strength of the habit, and this is in contrast to the Friedman permanent income hypothesis, which assumes that the permanent shock will result in immediate and complete adjustment of spending. Um, there have been many evidences from macroeconomic data which seem to suggest that consumption needs does indeed react sluggishly to macroeconomic shocks. That's the final modification with respect to consumption theories, which is based on the life cycle model. And this is the abandonment of the consumption, that people accumulate wealth solely to finance their own future spending. We have already discussed that we cannot say that people save some money and they die only after using their saving. That we cannot say that. Our saving will be used by the next generation or our parents or something when we die, right? So the highest saving rates of the richest few percent of households are hard to explain in such a framework. The case of saving, that even if we accumulate some savings, we can die before using the saving. So in that case, our parents would be using our saving, or our siblings would be using our saving, or someone else would be using our saving. So we cannot make any kind of predictions with respect to saving, and we cannot make promises to anyone by telling that I'll be using all my savings before I die. So these kinds of prediction cannot be made because our death is something which is unpredictable. It can happen anytime, right? So the most popular solution to the basic theories of consumptions is to incorporate the bequest motive. We will be passing our savings to the next generation, or to our parents, or to our siblings, or whomever it may be. Anyway, we are not taking all our savings to the place we go after our death, right? So we are not taking we are leaving all our savings here itself, and we die. That is what is happening, and this is applicable to each and every person. There is no differences with respect to whether you are rich or whether you are poor or something, right? So an alternative theory holds that some rich people gain satisfaction directly from their ownership of wealth, not merely from the happy contemplation that wealth being spent by children, grandchildren, and so on. And this is very much important. Some people, they have a tendency to accumulate all their wealth. They do not spend. They are very much what to say, spendthrift and or miser. They will accumulate all their wealth. I don't know why they are accumulating all their wealth without spending for their wife or children. When they accumulate all their wealth, might be they are out of their expectation that they will be taking all their wealth to the place they go after they die. I don't know, but there are people who accumulate all their wealth, who save all their wealth, and they are very hesitant to spend anything. They even if their wife or children are starving, they don't care about it. They don't mind it. So there are people like that, and there are people who are very much ready to uh, take care of all the needs of their wife and children, even after going for borrowing. They don't care whether they are borrowing or whether they are earning, but they are just concerned about meeting the needs of their wife and children. So there are people who are actually having a balanced kind of behavior with respect to saving and spending. Okay, people might enjoy being wealthy for reasons of status, power, etc., and as a result they will try to earn more. Coming to the alternatives to fully informed rationality, we have a assumption in economics that people are rational, consumers are rational. Why they are rational? Because they tend to increase their consumption out of the expectation that if they increase their consumption, they will be gaining more utility. The modification just described poses no challenge to the premise that consumers are fully informed rational optimizers. The popularity of this assumption reflects that the fact that there is usually one way to behave rationally, and all the other ways are considered to be stupid ways of behavior. In the absence of a general theory of stupidity, economists they have a natural tendency to construct some unified, compelling alternative to rational optimization framework. There have been many evidences from experimental psychology which suggests that people have a difficulty to resist their impulse for instant gratification. Whether they have self-control problems or not, there are certain economic effects which are unclear. So still people are developing, still economists are developing certain models which shows that self-control is very important, especially when we have to think about the consequences of our consumption. In today's world we cannot predict anything. Even nobody could predicted that Russia could go for a war with Ukraine, and there have been many people who suffered a lot, right? The people in Ukraine they suffered a lot. They couldn't actually continue with their previous consumption, and their consumption pattern before war and after war were completely different. And during war also, they could not continue with the consumption pattern they could had in the pre-war period. And pre-war, post-war, everything we have to take into consideration. And these things can happen in anybody's life, because our life is unpredictable, and death too is unpredictable. um, there are certain implications which we have to take into our analysis when we are going for self-control problems, uh, and this is what is done by many economists. They have taken into consideration the saving aspect, borrowing aspect, rational optimization framework, etc. But we have to understand that by assuming the credit card borrowing is the result of an irrational impulse spending, which while the retirement saving deductions are assumed to have been set up by cool-headed rational side of consumers' nature, and this here too there could be differences. Each person would be having different opinion, and I cannot say that you are wrong by if you disagree with this opinion, because you might be having your own explanations. You might be able to prove your side um, by what telling your own explanations, by arguing for different aspects. Consumers who do not know whether a given shock to their incomes is transitory or permanent will tend to react as though there is some chance it is temporary and some chance it is permanent. We cannot say that the poor people will spend their entire transitory income on the day on which they receive the same, and rich people will be saving their entire transitory income, and they will not be ready to spend at least a single rupee out from their transitory income. So we cannot make any kind of prediction, because all these depend upon the psychological behavior of a person, right? And uh, people are different from each other. One person is different from others. uh, this is applicable to everyone, and we cannot predict human behavior. Even though we can make some kind of general statement, that doesn't mean that and that particular statement is applicable to all in an equal fashion. Coming to the influence of consumption in business cycle, we could see that the private consumption expenditure, it amounts two-thirds of the gross domestic product in most of the developed countries, and a substantial portion of the government expenditure is considered to be a consumption expenditure. If you look into the case of national income accounting, the private consumption expenditure, it is divided into three broad categories, which is expenditure on services, expenditure for durable goods, and expenditure for non-durable goods. Coming to the durable goods section, and this is the expected lifetime expenditure on durable goods, and you are expecting that you are incurring some expenditure on a particular good for, and this good could be used for certain years because it is durable. And coming to the case of services, this include a broad range of items like telephone, utility service, legal service, financial service, travel, lodging, etc. And the non-durable goods, the goods that we use for everyday consumption, these are actually, your interest can change, your likes can change, your dislikes can change. So that means that the day the things that you consume today might not be the things that you consume tomorrow, and these could be entirely different from the things that you consumed in the past. Your interest can change. That depends upon your psychological behavior, right? The distinction between the flow of consumption as economists conceive it and the consumption expenditure as measured in the national income accounts, it is considered to be a vital tool in understanding the macroeconomic fluctuations. That means that from boom to recession, from recession to depression. So these things are actually going as a cycle, right? Boom period means doesn't mean that every day you will be in the boom period. Depression means doesn't mean that every day you will be in the depression. You will be making some kind of efforts to recover out of depression, right? So we cannot make any kind of prediction, but we will be making certain efforts from our part. Therefore, it is the level of consumption expenditure, not the flow of consumption, that determines the short-term macroeconomic prosperity. Macroeconomists, they have extended the rational optimization framework to account for the lumpy nature of durable goods as well. And in economic downturn, what happens is the expenditure on durable goods. This will have some effect on the consumers, because the replacement of durable goods, they have a tendency to decide to hold this until there is some improvement in the economy. The early phase of economic recovery is generally exhibit a surge in the spending on durable goods, and this logic explains why spending on durable goods is much more sensitive to interest rates. That's all for today. I I could hope that after listening to this video, you'll be getting some idea on the general aspect of the consumption theories, the consumption theories in the past, consumption theories, and the criticism to the consumption theories in the past, and the modern development with respect to the consumption theories. That's all for today. I'll be doing a separate video by discussing the main consumption theory, the classic consumption theory. The classic consumption theory is, what I mean is the one proposed by Keynes, Milton Friedman, Modigliani, and one more. I don't exactly remember the name. I mean, the absolute income hypothesis, permanent income hypothesis, life cycle hypothesis, and one more. That is what I forgot now. Okay, anyway, we'll be discussing the four important theories of consumption in the coming video. That's all for today. Please like, share, and subscribe to this channel for more videos. And you can be a part of my Telegram group and Telegram channel to discuss your doubts. I'll be providing the links of both my Telegram channel, discussing both the links of my. I'll be giving the links of both my Telegram group and Telegram channel in the description box. You can be a part of that, and I'm really happy to say that my Telegram group, it is helping a lot of people, because these people are coming to the group and they are making a lot of discussions in the group, and the notes have been shared, many doubts are cleared, etc. All these kinds of things are happening in the Telegram group. I'm really happy that I could provide a platform for you to make all these kinds of things there. So for people who are not there in the group, you can join the group and you can be a part of the group. You can make discussions, you can make debates, you can ask questions, you can seek answers, question, answer, everything. All these things are very much, what to say, all these things would make the group live as well. uh, Still it is live, and you can be a part of the group to make it more live. So that's all for today. I don't want to talk more about all these kinds of things. I will be providing the links of both my Telegram channel and Telegram group in the description box. That's all for today. Thank you.